Okay, now this is a game just from last night against David Cutmore in the North Circular League, which, like the Hearts League, I'm doing quite well. Actually, very, very well at the moment. Still 8 out of 8. But it's against lower rated opposition, average opposition. But my opponent last night, Wood Green, was David Cutmore, so he's won about 179 at the moment. I think that's his peak rating that he's been in the last few years. That's his absolute peak. So I was playing him with the black pieces, and last year actually I think I lost to him in. I was trying to play the tango as an experiment, knight c6, but he played quite interestingly with h4 early in the opening. Seemed to get a good advantage. So I thought I'd risk playing the king's engine, even though he often plays the 4 pawns attack, which is kind of very aggressive, very dangerous. And I thought, however, this 4 pawns attack reminds me of Benoni's strategy a bit. When black plays e6 and e takes, it is potentially the Benoni structure. And I like the dynamism of the Benoni and, going for the dark squares and giving up this bishop and the general dynamism of potentially the position. So I went in for it, bishop g4. He played actually bishop d3 instead of bishop e2. And now after e6, he played an interesting move, which apparently he's been playing quite a bit recently. Apparently even Kasparov has played it. He played d takes e. And it's interesting because it potentially gives c6 for my knight in one go, for example. And also, potentially this f file, I'm bearing down on the f pawn potentially. And in the game, it seemed I did try and play on those aspects. So I played my knight immediately to c6. He played bishop e3, and now I target the f4 pawn, which I thought was kind of logical, knight h5. And it's here he collected my light squared bishop. But on the other hand, I'm getting a bit more pressure on d4. So knight d4, his rook goes back, and now I play bishop h6. So I'm again targeting the f4 pawn, pinning that pawn to the bishop. And I thought I was quite comfortable here. However, in this position actually I had also considered queen h4. But then queen g4 I thought, and maybe this is not so great. If I take off queens, although he had double pawns, he's pushing me back. Maybe like g5, and it'll be starting to look. Although that doesn't seem possible there actually. G5 knight g4. So here, this wouldn't be that bad. So maybe actually this isn't bad at all, just to take queens here if this did happen. So in other words, queen h4 might actually be a good move here. I don't really want to engine check this too much. I played bishop h6 anyway. So queen g4, I played e5 now. So I'm giving up the d5 square to his knight, but I'm strengthening my d4 knight, putting a bit more pressure on f4 and this pin. So he played g3, and now I played a move which seemed to surprise him, as I think he wanted to play knight d5 anyway, but I want to park my queen somewhere nice, and I thought g7 was nice, because it's kind of shielding this pawn from being pinned to the king, and the queen might potentially be good on the diagonal. It's also guarding, c7, e7, potentially. So he plays rook af1, and I take on f4 now. So I'm splitting his pawns a bit. He's got an isolated h pawn, and I just play rook ae8. I'm playing quite quickly actually. It is a fast time limit league. I think 30 moves in now on the quarter, and then 15 for the rest. Or is it 35 in now on the quarter? I keep forgetting the time limit, but it's fast. And in fact, our board one managed to get into severe time trouble. He was an IM, Ravi Kumar. And he lost, but we managed to draw the match. So, but it's always very tight against Wood Green Chess Club. We never managed to beat them. I don't think we've beaten them for ages now. So anyway, bishop d2. I played knight f6, getting rid of this monster knight on d5, and I was getting more pleased with my position. But I have to rearrange my pieces. My bishop and queen are quite awkwardly placed. Bishop's not really doing that much, as the pressure on f4, I can't easily increase it. So I start reshuffling my pieces. First, after king h1, I play rook ef8 because the rook wasn't really doing anything on e4. And now I try and do something about, you know, this potential pin on the pawn. I play king h8, but walking into this other pin, so it's not brilliant. Queen g3, now queen f6. So I'm trying to reshuffle again with bishop g7 to be able to sort of unpin on this diagonal. But to my amazement, he kind of got very impatient in this position. He just blew his position to bits, actually, at move 26 here, move 27, by playing e5. And it just gives me very rosy options. I just take on e5, and if he takes on e5, I can just take on f2. I think this is fine. Taking on f2, there's an immediate threat of rook f3, so I think e6 is far too slow, etc. So this looks really good. And not only that, there's also queen c6 check as a resource. So anyway, he plays f5, and I just play queen c6 check, because I'm going to block this bishop now with e4. If he moves his king, say, then I can play this move, maybe e4, and then threaten, you know, knight takes f5 as an example, or even here just knight takes f5. So it's almost, you know, he's losing 2 pawns here after the c5. It's a disaster. He just makes it very, very easy for me to convert this now, because you know, we've got a lot of major pieces still on both sides. But look what happens now. After knight takes f5, he plays king h3 fine to protect the h-pawn. So I managed to get both rooks off now with knight d6. The rooks come off, and now after h5, I find a nice move here to simplify even further. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Okay, I just play e4. So I'm trading bishops, and he can't take here because of knight g5 check. So the bishops come off. So we've got quite a clear endgame now. And my king is also one step closer. It's just gliding along the dark squares to hit c4 or herd this pawn. So bishop e2, I just take on h5. I don't want to leave that pawn hanging around. Now knight e5. Potentially the knight has got a really good square d3 to try and cut this king from coming in to f2 later. So b3. So my king glides down the diagonal. I'm just 2 pawns up and coming in very aggressively to d4. I put a pawn on the dark square just in case. And now I just push my king here, attacking these pawns, although allowing this apparent fork. Double attack with the bishop, but it's harmless because my pawn is really, really dangerous. So dangerous, I just play e3. So if he takes on h7, I just play e2 queening. He played king f3, and now instead of going for these pawns, I just herd the pawn in now of king d2. So a massive threat of e2. If he takes the knight, I just take, and obviously it's just clearly winning. So that was it. He resigned. He made it very easy after e5. Just his thoughts at the time in the post-mortem, he thought I was better here, and I was going to just rearrange and improve my position gradually and grind him down. So it was a bit of a panic reaction to play e5 though, I thought. I recommended just h5, and according to Ribka, actually white's better after h5, technically. Alright, let's stick the engine on here. This is the critical position. White doesn't need to blow his position up. h5. Okay, what's going on? If I take queen takes h5, apparently white's a bit better. Say queen h6, that's what we were looking at last night. Queen h6, bishop h6, f5. But we were sort of observing that, you know, this would be good for black, this dark square, for example. So why isn't this okay for black? Rook h2, bishop e5. Surely the dynamism for white is getting reduced here. Rook f3, but Ribka still has an advantage for white. It's quite funny. It's diminishing now. It's actually dropped. It's just dropped just now from 0.30 to 0.01. So maybe we were intuitively right that, you know, if black can get this dark square grip, black surely is going to be at least okay. But that was his best continuation, I think, because, you know, even if he does bishop takes d4 later, who have opposite coloured bishops, it's actually now becoming equal, dead equal on evaluation. Okay, so he blew himself up really, quite unexpectedly with this e5, which gave Bonnet. We had a 3-2 lead, but our IM on board one lost, so it was a drawn match in the end, 3-all. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.